Okay, some of the stuff that you need to know when you're doing this two-sided machining is you got to have everything kind of orientated on the same axis and the same side. And a good, for instance, on my vacuum plate, I have my vacuum plate actually access to the center. And if you look right here, I've got that's where my vacuum hole is, and then I've got these 4 holes. These are indexing pins that I have extra plates. And if you'll see my indexing pins on this plate that I put up there for different projects or different things. So in other words, this plate will index in the same place every time, and you'll notice that I put top on it. And then these pins go down in those holes, and now this plate is indexed exactly where it was when I originally drilled it. And when I originally drilled it, I drilled through this plate into my vacuum clamp. That way these holes are exactly the same on the vacuum clamp and my adapter plate. Now on this adapter plate I have a square, if you can see it there, a square that I am going to index the part from. So what I'll do is cut a square out on my CNC that fits exactly into this, and it will be centered on this plate. So whenever I flip the part for the second side, I always have to make sure it's orientated so that it's always on the same side. So in other words, if I have a block in here, I'll orientate the block like this. I will put a hash mark on the top to indicate where the top is. So I'll indicate where the top is, like up here. And then when the vacuum plate pulls it down, it's going to pull it down in the same place every time. So when I go to flip it, I'll flip it, and this edge is on the same edge, so that when the software knows exactly where this piece is going to be cut out from. So when I flip it back to this side to do this side now, it's always indexed exactly the same. You want to make this a pretty tight fit. So you want to have this a pretty decent fit. Again, like I said, there's a couple different ways of indexing the block every time. You can put pins in it, like this block is here, and I usually do that on a little bit larger stock, but when you got stock that's maybe this size here, it's actually easier to make a square, and then I'll suck it down with the square. And let me get the vacuum pump started, and you'll see what I mean. Right now I have no vacuum on this. I'll turn the vacuum valve on, and you can see that it pulled this right down in there. Okay, and it doesn't move. I mean, and this doesn't move. That's all pulled together real nice and tight. And right now I have about 19 inches of vacuum on it, and that's not going to go anywhere. It's going to be right there. So that's one of the secrets that you need to know about when you're doing this, is that you always have to be using, like, for instance, I'm using this edge here all the time, and when you're setting it up in your software, you have to be mindful about that. So in other words, this side, A side, would be a mirror image of B side, but you always have to be using the same edge as an indicator, and I always use the center as also an indicator. So in other words, when I'm in the software, I indicate everything off this center with this edge as being the same. And a lot of times in the software, what I'll do on the outside is I'll put a letter right here, so that when I flip it, I know which side is up, because the letter, when I flip it, it's going to be backwards. So just a few things that you need to. Okay, we're using the three our Cut 3D software. We're going to want to do this from the top. Okay. We are going to put it to scale to inches, which is going to change these numbers here. And we're going to do a top and a bottom. And then we're going to say apply and then go to next. See, our X direction's going this way. One of the things I want to do is attach the tab to the back, and I want this open to be Y in this direction. So what I have to do is rotate it, okay, until I get it in this direction. Then I apply it for top and bottom. Then I go to next. Now here's where we're going to sit there and tell the software where we want our 0 to be and where we're going to touch off on and all that stuff. So we're going to want to touch off on the top, which is up in this corner here. Our original position is going to be X0, Y0, which we're going to do in the center, which it is right now, because we picked that as the material size up here. Okay. You can make the material size anything you want. So let's just for giggles make ours 2 by 2. 2 by 2, and we're going to go 3/4. So we're doing it by 3/4. Okay. We want it symmetrical, probably around the outside of it using the model silhouette, but I want to have enough room so my 1/8 inch bit can go down the side of it. So I'm going to make this 125, and that way I'll have enough room for the bit to come down the side of it. We want this to be in the center. Okay, so we want our center plane to be in the center of it, because when we rotate it, we still want to work off this center plane in order to get the depth right on the top and the bottom. Now, one thing about this particular thing is that we have this deep hole down here. Okay, now I can turn this around and you will see, because of where the center line is, it's gonna not mill the whole all the way down to the bottom. So there's a couple ways you can do this. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll take this cursor over here and I'll draw it down to see where I have to be in order to get enough to get the bottom cleaned out. Okay, and it says I have to be at 30.37. Recenter this, so I have to add to this 1772 to get 30.37. That's about 140 thousandths, so we're going to put 140 here. And what that's going to do is drop down the cut plane to where it goes down deep enough to get it cut on this side. Okay? And then we're going to say apply. Then we're going to go to next. Oh no, we're going to add tabs next. We want a tab on this end here to hold it. And I'm going to make my tab, yeah, this 1/4 by 2, 1/4 by 1/4 would be fine. Okay, we're going to add a tab. You will notice that it looks like this little dagger there. We're going to kind of put that where we want the tab to be, which is right there. You'll notice it says that's where the tab is going to be, and if you look, it's pretty much on the center line. So we'll say close. So we got our tab, we've got our overcut in distance. We are cut the cut plane position in the model. The model is positioned right in the middle. We're going to have 125 thousandths on the outside, and now we're ready to go to next. You will notice here that it says this is the roughing tool path. Now I'll tell you the honest to God truth, I'm going to rough and finish with the same ball nose because I don't want to do bit changes. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and select 1/8 inch ball nose, go up to maybe 20%. Feed rate and stuff is pretty good, and we're going to say OK for our tool, and it will put that tool information in here. It says it's tool number 1, rapid clearance. I usually go 200 thousandths over for rapid clearance for your Z level. Profile at the last. And you can raster this one way or the other. Being that it's longer in the Y direction than the X direction, I'm going to go in the Y direction. Okay? And then I'm going to say calculate. And you'll notice that it's got bottom and top. It says leaving large allowances, you can do stuff to your bit. Well, we're doing it in plastic, so I'm not really worried. And we're going to just wait for it to register itself. Okay, it says it's going to take about 7 minutes to do. Sometimes that's right, sometimes it's wrong. You notice that we have the top calculated here, and it does go all the way down to the bottom like we wanted, so it should clean it out. Okay, and then if we flip it over and look at the bottom side of it, it does the bottom real nice too. Okay, now we're ready to go to the finish toolpath. Again, I'm going to select a 1/8 inch ball nose. This time I'm going to have the step over at a lower rate so it gives me a finer cut. I'll leave the pass step the same, and we'll say OK, and we'll leave everything else basically the same and make it calculate. This should go a little bit quicker because we're not hogging out as much material. And there's our finished toolpath there. And you will notice that the top and the bottom are both done. And it looks or appears that it will go all the way down to where we need it to go. And that's about 4 minutes. The next thing we have is a cutout. We don't need a cutout toolpath for this. And now we can watch the animation. There it is, all roughed in from the top. And this would be it all roughed in from the bottom. Okay, this is the rough cut of the bottom. And let's look what the finished toolpaths are going to look like. Well, here's your finished toolpath of your bottom. And here is the finished toolpath of your top. You'll notice that we still have this piece here, but that's what's holding everything in. And there's your piece in your 2-inch square block. Okay? Now the next thing that we need to do is go in and save the roughing tool pass, and the finishing tool pass. I'm going to save them all to one file. That way the top and the bottom are each individual files. So the first one I'm doing is the top, and we're going to just save these to the desktop. We're going to put top on here and save that to the desktop, and then we'll come and do the bottom and do the same thing. Now when we look on our desktop, there's our two tap files. And at this point we should be done with our tool paths. We'll minimize this, and then we will open up the control panel for the code. You're going to use detect the touch plate. We're going to use that to detect it. We'll load our code, and then we'll run the file. Okay, we already touched off with the V-bit. I usually take a V-bit to touch off so I get absolutely in the center. As you can see, I've got it to where the top is at the top. I am centered in the middle because that's where my software has me being centered. And then I'm going to touch off at the top, which I'm going to do with my my software is telling me that I'm touching off in the top. So everything is up, the vacuum is up, so I'm about ready to do my touch off on the top of this and let it do its thing. So I'm loading the software. Okay, I'm going to detect. We're ready to detect the touch plate. So I've got it there, got the touch plate in place. I'm going to tell it to detect it. It now knows where the top of my thing is. I'm going to load the software. Do the top first. And we should be ready to run. bottom. We're going to do the bottom now. Here's our completed part. All I got to do is cut that little piece off, and there you go.